A failed engineer's last stand, the wrench slipped from Jake Morrison's trembling hands for the third time that morning, clattering against the metal floor of his isolated workshop on Europa Station. He stared at his shaking fingers, once steady, enough to repair quantum drives blindfolded, now betraying him when he needed them most. The neural damage from the reactor explosion 6 months ago had left him useless for precision work. 23 people had died in that blast. 23 souls scattered across the void because Jake had miscalculated the containment field harmonics by 0.001%. Such a tiny error, yet it had torn apart the mining vessel Prometheus and everyone aboard. The investigation had cleared him of wrongdoing, calling it an unforeseeable cascade failure. But Jake knew better. His hands were instruments of death now, not creation. The abandoned workshop around him reflected his internal state. Tools lay scattered, projects half finished, components gathering dust. Europa Station's outer rim housed dozens of these forgotten spaces, relics from when the moon's ice mining operations had been more ambitious. Jake had chosen this place to end his story quietly, away from the judgment of others. The plasma cutter hummed to life as he activated it, its blue-white beam casting eerie shadows on the walls. He had calculated the precise angle, the exact depth needed, quick and clean, just like his engineering solutions used to be. The tremor in his hands didn't matter for this final task, but as the cutter approached his wrist, something extraordinary happened. The workshop's lights flickered, and a strange harmonic resonance filled the air. A plasma beam sparked against an invisible barrier, unable to penetrate his skin. Jake staggered backward, confusion replacing his grim determination. "What the hell?" he whispered, examining his arm. The skin appeared normal, but something had changed. A faint blue glow pulsed beneath the surface, following patterns that seemed almost like circuitry. The voice that answered him came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through his bones rather than his ears. Jake Morrison, engineer, designation, compatible host. Integration protocol initiated. Jake spun around, searching for the source. "Who's there? Show yourself." The workshop's temperature dropped several degrees as something materialized before him. Not quite solid, not quite energy. The entity shifted between states like liquid metal touched by electricity. Its form suggested intelligence, but remained alien in ways that made Jake's mind struggle to process what he was seeing. "We are the Zephyrians," it said, its voice like wind through crystal caves. "Our people have watched your species for 3 rotations of your star. We seek partnership, not conquest. You have been chosen." Chosen for what? Jake demanded, though he noticed his hands had stopped shaking for the first time in months. Symbiosis. Your neural pathways show damage, but your core engineering matrix remains intact. We offer restoration and enhancement in exchange for cooperation. Together, we can prevent the coming darkness. Jake looked at his steady hands, then at the plasma cutter that had been mysteriously deflected. The coming darkness? The Devourers approach your system. They consume technology, absorb knowledge, leave only empty worlds behind. Your species will need our gifts to survive what follows. For the first time since the Prometheus disaster, Jake felt something other than crushing guilt. Purpose stirred within him, fragile but real. His hands might have failed him once, but perhaps they could be redeemed. "What exactly are you offering?" he asked. The Zephyrian's form pulsed brighter. Partnership. Enhancement. The chance to save billions instead of mourning 23. The symbiotic awakening, the integration process, felt like being reborn through fire and lightning. Jake's consciousness expanded as the Zephyrian entity merged with his neural network, bringing with it knowledge that spanned millennia. His damaged synapses were not merely repaired but enhanced, creating connections that allowed him to perceive reality in ways human minds were never meant to comprehend. When the process ended, Jake found himself changed in fundamental ways. His hands no longer shook, but more than that, they had become something extraordinary. Beneath his skin, bioluminescent pathways pulsed with alien energy, turning his fingers into precision instruments capable of manipulating matter at the molecular level. The enhancement is complete, the Zephyrian voice spoke within his mind now, no longer external, but part of his inner dialogue. You are Jake Morrison, but you are also Zeph 779. We are one entity with dual consciousness. Jake flexed his transformed hands, watching as his fingertips generated microscopic force fields. He reached for a broken circuit board on his workbench and watched in amazement as his touch revealed the exact location of every fault, every weakness in the design. More than that, he could repair them with a thought, his enhanced nervous system, directing energy flows with impossible precision. This is incredible, he whispered, then paused. But why me? Why not someone who hasn't killed people through incompetence? The Zephyrian presence in his mind radiated something like compassion, because guilt makes you careful. Pride makes beings reckless. Your species calls it failure, but we see it as education. You will not make the same mistakes again. A proximity. Alarm suddenly shrieked through the workshop. Jake's enhanced senses immediately analyzed the alert, identifying 3 unknown vessels approaching Europa Station at sublight speed. The ship's energy signatures were unlike anything in human databases, but the Zephyrian knowledge within him recognized them instantly. Devourers, he breathed, the word carrying weight he hadn't expected. Indeed, they have arrived sooner than calculated. Your species is not ready for direct confrontation. We must prepare defenses. Jake's new abilities interfaced with the workshop's systems automatically, his consciousness expanding to encompass the entire station's network. He could feel every circuit, every power conduit, every life sign aboard Europa Station. 12,000 humans, all blissfully unaware that their world was about to change forever. The Devourer ships were massive, their hull patterns designed to absorb and redirect energy rather than deflect it. They approached with predatory patience, scanning the station's defenses with contempt. Jake realized with growing horror that Europa Station's military capabilities were laughably inadequate against these beings. I need to warn them, he said, reaching for the communication console. Warning without solution creates panic, the Zephyrian cautioned. Better to demonstrate capability first. Jake's enhanced perception analyzed the approaching ships, identifying their weaknesses with startling clarity. Their energy absorption systems had limitations, vulnerable to specific harmonic frequencies that could overload their collection. Matrices. But exploiting those vulnerabilities would require technology far beyond human capability. Unless someone could build it. Jake's hands moved across, his workbench with supernatural speed, assembling components in ways that defied conventional physics. The Zephyrian knowledge guided him, but his human creativity found solutions the alien mind hadn't considered. Together, they created something neither could have achieved alone. The device that emerged from their collaboration was beautiful and terrible. No larger than a briefcase, it contained enough concentrated energy to power a small city, all focused into a single harmonic pulse designed to disrupt Devourer technology. Will it work? Jake asked, admiring their creation. Theory suggests 97% probability of success, the Zephyrian replied. But deployment requires close proximity to target vessels. Extreme danger to combined consciousness. Jake looked at the device, then at his transformed hands. 6 months ago, he had been ready to die from guilt and despair. Now he held the power to save thousands, perhaps millions of lives. The irony wasn't lost on him. Then we'd better get close, he said, attaching the device to his belt. I've got some redemption to earn. The workshop's maintenance exit led directly to the station's docking bay. Jake's enhanced abilities allowed him to override security protocols without triggering alarms, accessing a small transport pod designed for intersystem. Courier runs. As he prepared for launch, he felt the Zephyrian presence strengthen within his mind. "We face this together," it said. No longer human, no longer Zephyrian, but something new. Something the Devourers have never encountered before. Jake Morrison, transformed engineer and reluctant hero, launched into the void between worlds, carrying humanity's first defense against an ancient evil. The engineer's gambit, the transport pod's engines strained against the gravitational pull of Jupiter as Jake accelerated toward the Devourer fleet. His enhanced senses tracked their movements with precision that would have been impossible for baseline human reflexes. The three massive vessels had taken defensive positions around Europa Station, their energy collection arrays already beginning to drain power from the moon's infrastructure. "They're not attacking," Jake observed, studying their formation. "They're harvesting." "Correct," the Zephyrian consciousness confirmed. Devourers prefer to absorb civilization slowly, extracting maximum technological benefit before consuming. Biological matter. Your species has perhaps 6 hours before they begin taking human subjects for analysis. Jake's stomach tightened at the clinical way the alien described humanity's potential fate. Through his neural link with Europa Station's systems, he could feel the growing panic as power fluctuations began affecting life support systems. Emergency protocols were activating, but they would only buy time. The lead Devourer vessel was the size of a small city, its hull covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living metal. Jake's enhanced vision revealed the energy absorption nodes positioned across its surface, each one capable of draining a fusion reactor in minutes. But the Zephyrian knowledge within him had identified something the Devourers didn't realize. Their own strength was also their weakness. "They've never encountered harmonically destabilized energy," Jake murmured, adjusting the device's frequency modulation. "They'll try to absorb the pulse, but the resonance will overload their collection matrices. Theory remains untested." The Zephyrian warned. "Failure results in complete energy absorption and consciousness termination." Jake's hands moved over the transport pod's controls, his enhanced abilities allowing him to modify the vessel's systems in real time. The pod wasn't designed for combat, but with Zephyrian knowledge guiding his modifications, it became something unprecedented. Its hull began to emit the same bioluminescent patterns that covered Jake's skin, creating a resonance field that masked its true nature. The Devourers noticed his approach, but dismissed the small vessel as insignificant. Their sensors read it as a simple transport pod, probably trying to evacuate station personnel. They had encountered countless such attempts across the galaxy, all equally futile. Jake used their arrogance against them, piloting the pod in an erratic pattern that suggested panic while actually positioning himself for optimal strike geometry. The device on his belt hummed with contained energy, its harmonic frequency building toward the critical threshold. 500 meters, he announced, sweat beading on his forehead despite the pod's climate control. 400. 300. The nearest Devourer vessel finally took notice, its energy collection arrays swiveling toward the approaching pod. Jake felt the familiar tingle of power drain as the alien technology began to siphon energy from his ship's systems. But instead of fleeing, he accelerated directly toward the collection array. 200 meters. 100 now. Jake triggered the device just as the Devourer vessel attempted to absorb his ship's remaining power. The harmonic pulse erupted from the device with enough force to shatter normal matter, its frequency precisely calibrated to overload energy collection systems. The pulse hit the Devourer's array and was immediately drawn into their absorption. Network. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the geometric patterns on the vessel's hull began to flicker and distort. The energy collection arrays sparked and smoked as harmonic resonance cascaded through their systems. The ship's perfect geometric form began to buckle and twist as internal explosions rippled through its structure. "It's working," Jake shouted, even as the dying vessel's gravitational field began to tear his transport pod apart. "The resonance is spreading to the other ships." The three Devourer vessels were linked by quantum entanglement, sharing energy and information instantaneously across their fleet. The harmonic pulse traveled along these connections, multiplying its destructive potential with each transfer. Within seconds, all three ships were buckling under the strain of their own overloaded systems. But Jake's triumph was short-lived. The transport pod's structural integrity failed catastrophically, hull plates peeling away as the ship disintegrated. Around him, he had seconds before the void claimed him, but the Zephyrian presence in his mind had one final gift to offer. "Emergency protocols activated," it announced. "Consciousness transfer to quantum substrate. Physical form expendable." Jake felt his awareness expand beyond the confines of his dying body, his enhanced neural patterns uploading to the Zephyrian's quantum storage matrix. His last physical sensation was the transport pod's final explosion, but his consciousness survived, existing as pure information in the space between realities. The Devourer fleet died in spectacular fashion, their massive forms imploding as cascading system failures consumed them from within. The threat to Europa Station had been neutralized, but at what cost? Jake Morrison, the engineer who had sought death as penance for his failures, had found something greater than redemption. He had become something new, something that transcended the limitations of flesh and blood. His consciousness floated in the quantum void, watching the debris of his enemies scatter across the cosmos. "What happens now?" he asked the Zephyrian presence that shared his digital existence. "Now we prepare for the next phase," came the reply. "The Devourers were merely scouts. The true invasion fleet follows, and your species will need every advantage we can provide." Jake's disembodied consciousness focused on Europa Station, where emergency crews were already beginning to restore power and investigate the mysterious destruction of the alien fleet. They would need answers, and more importantly, they would need to be ready for what was coming. The engineer who had once trembled with guilt and self-doubt now faced the future with quantum-enhanced clarity. The real war was just beginning. The digital resurrection Jake Morrison's consciousness floated in the quantum realm for what felt like eons, though his enhanced perception told him only hours had passed in the physical universe. The Zephyrian quantum substrate sustained his awareness, but existence as pure information was profoundly disorienting. He could perceive Europa Station's electromagnetic spectrum, feel the flow of data through its networks, but lacked the ability to interact with the physical world. "Adjustment period is normal," the Zephyrian presence assured him. "Your neural patterns require recalibration for quantum existence. Soon you will understand the advantages of this form." Through the station's sensor network, Jake observed the aftermath of the Devourer attack. Emergency crews worked frantically to restore power and analyze the wreckage of the alien vessels. But their efforts were hampered by technology they couldn't comprehend, and Jake realized with growing frustration that he could help them if only he could find a way to communicate. The breakthrough came when Jake's consciousness encountered the station's central computer core. The quantum patterns of his enhanced mind resonated with the machine's processing matrices, creating a bridge between digital and biological intelligence. For the first time since his transformation, Jake felt truly alive. "Warning, unauthorized. Access detected," the computer's security protocols announced as Jake's consciousness merged with its systems. "Override security measures," Jake commanded, his thoughts flowing directly through the digital pathways. "Authorization. Chief Engineer Morrison, Emergency Protocol 779. The computer's resistance crumbled as Jake's enhanced consciousness demonstrated knowledge of systems that should have been impossible for any individual to understand. Within moments, he had full access to every network, every sensor, every communication channel on Europa Station. Commander Victoria. Sterling was in the middle of a heated conversation with Earth Command when her communication display flickered and Jake's image appeared on the screen. Not his physical form, which had been destroyed with the transport pod, but a digital representation created by the station's holographic systems. "Commander Sterling," Jake said, his voice synthesized, but unmistakably human. "We need to talk." Sterling's weathered face went pale. "Jake Morrison? That's impossible. You were killed when the transport pod exploded." "Not killed," Jake corrected, his digital form maintaining eye contact with unsettling intensity. "Transformed. I've been enhanced by an alien species called the Zephyrians, and I'm here to warn you about what's coming next." The commander's training kicked in, her hand moving toward the emergency alert button. This is some kind of trick. Morrison's dead, and even if he wasn't, he'd never have access to classified holographic systems. To prove his identity, Jake accessed the station's personal files and displayed Morrison's engineering records, complete with psychological profiles and classified incident reports. More importantly, he demonstrated knowledge of the Devourer attack that only someone present could have possessed. "The vessels that just attacked us were scouts," Jake explained, his digital image pacing the commander's office with eerily realistic movement. "The main invasion fleet is approximately 72 hours away. 300 ships, each capable of consuming entire planets. The Hybrid Alliance, 71 hours after the Devourer scout fleet's destruction." Jake Morrison's consciousness had spread throughout the solar system's communication networks. His digital presence coordinated with Earth Command, Mars Colonial Authority, and the asteroid mining guilds, preparing humanity's first truly unified defense against extinction. The transformation wasn't limited to Jake alone. 17 volunteers from Europa Station had agreed to undergo the Zephyrian enhancement process, creating a cadre of human-alien hybrids capable of operating the advanced weapon systems that humanity desperately needed. Each volunteer had personal reasons for accepting the risk: lost family members, destroyed homes, or simply the understanding that conventional humanity stood no chance against the coming invasion. Engineer Lisa Chun had lost her entire family when the Devourers destroyed the research station at Titan. Her integration with Zephyrian technology granted her the ability to design defensive systems that adapted in real time to enemy tactics. Navigator Marcus Webb's enhancement allowed him to perceive space-time distortions that would give humanity advance warning of Devourer movements. Dr. Patricia Williams became a living medical database, capable of treating injuries that conventional medicine couldn't even diagnose. But the most profound transformation belonged to Jake himself. His consciousness had evolved beyond the quantum substrate, becoming something entirely new. He existed simultaneously in digital networks and physical space, his awareness spanning light years while maintaining perfect coherence. The Zephyrian presence that had once been separate from him was now fully integrated, creating a hybrid intelligence that neither species could have achieved alone. "Fleet approaching outer system boundary," Navigator Webb announced from his position at the enhanced sensor array. 317 vessels, just as predicted. Estimated arrival at Earth, 14 hours. Jake's digital form materialized beside Webb, his holographic image now indistinguishable from a physical presence. Composition analysis? 12 dreadnoughts, each capable of consuming a moon. 68 cruisers designed for planetary bombardment. The remainder are scout vessels and harvesting ships. Webb's enhanced perception allowed him to read the Devourer fleet's intentions with disturbing clarity. They're not planning to occupy Earth. They're planning to strip it bare. Across the solar system, humanity's hybrid defenders activated weapons that had been constructed using Zephyrian technology but powered by human ingenuity. The asteroid belt had been transformed into a vast defensive network with mining stations, converted into resonance cannons capable of destabilizing Devourer hull plating. Mars hosted the primary quantum bomb fabrication facility, where engineer Chan's adaptive designs created weapons that could adjust their frequency patterns mid-flight. Earth itself had become a fortress, its orbital platforms enhanced with harmonic shields that could absorb and redirect enemy energy attacks. But Jake knew that all of these preparations would be meaningless if humanity couldn't match the Devourer's tactical superiority. Initiating battle network, Jake announced, his consciousness linking with every human Zephyrian hybrid in the solar system. Collective awareness activated. The sensation was indescribable. 17 enhanced human minds suddenly shared a common awareness, their individual perspectives merging into a composite intelligence that could process information at superhuman speeds. Jake felt himself becoming the central node of this network, his digital existence allowing him to coordinate the others with perfect efficiency. The Devourer fleet approached with the confidence of beings who had never faced serious resistance. Their formations were elegant but predictable, designed to maximize energy collection while minimizing risk to their primary vessels. They had no concept of an enemy that could adapt faster than they could react. First contact in 30 seconds, Webb reported, his enhanced senses tracking the enemy fleet's approach. They're scanning our defenses. Let them scan, Jake replied, his consciousness already anticipating the Devourer's tactical responses. They'll find exactly what we want them to find. The battle began with brutal efficiency. The Devourer fleet's energy collection arrays reached out to drain power from the asteroid belt's mining stations, expecting to find the same primitive technology they had encountered countless times before. Instead, they found resonance traps. That turned their own absorption systems against them. The first wave of Devourer scouts simply ceased to exist, their hull plating destabilized by harmonic frequencies that their sensors couldn't detect until it was too late. The larger vessels adapted quickly, adjusting their energy collection patterns to avoid the resonance traps, but this adaptation left them vulnerable to the quantum bombs that engineer Chun had designed to exploit exactly this tactical shift. They're learning, Chun reported through the battle network, adjusting targeting parameters. So are we, Jake replied, his consciousness flowing through the network to coordinate the next phase of the defense. All units implement pattern 779. The human Zephyrian hybrid network moved with perfect coordination. They are enhanced. Minds processing tactical data faster than any individual could comprehend. Each defensive position adapted its strategies in real time, creating a fluid battle plan that changed faster than the Devourers could counter. But the enemy had advantages that technology alone couldn't overcome. Their sheer numbers were overwhelming, and their experience in galactic warfare showed in their systematic approach to dismantling human defenses. One by one, the asteroid belt's resonance cannons fell silent, their enhanced operators pushed beyond their limits by the constant adaptation required to match Devourer tactics. We're losing, Webb announced, his voice strained by the effort of maintaining the battle network connection. They're grinding us down through attrition. Jake's consciousness expanded, reaching beyond the solar system to touch the vast network of Zephyrian knowledge that existed in the quantum realm. Somewhere in that ancient repository of information was the key to victory, but accessing it required a level of integration that no hybrid had ever attempted. I'm going deeper, Jake announced, his digital form beginning to fade as he dove into the quantum substrate. Maintain the network. I'll find us a way to win. In the space between realities, Jake Morrison encountered the collective consciousness of the Zephyrian civilization. Millions of minds that had uploaded themselves to the quantum realm rather than face physical extinction at the hands of the devourers. They had waited here for eons, hoping for a species capable of wielding their knowledge effectively. You? Seek the final protocol, an ancient Zephyrian consciousness observed. The weapon that can end the devourer threat forever. What's the cost? Jake asked, understanding that such power would require sacrifice. Total integration. Your species and ours, merged permanently. No longer human, no longer Zephyrian, but something entirely new. The transformation is irreversible. Jake thought. Of the 17 volunteers who had already begun that transformation, of the billions of humans who would die if the Devourers succeeded. The choice was clear, even if the consequences were unimaginable. Do it, he said. The quantum realm exploded. With light as Jake Morrison's consciousness became the conduit for the greatest transformation in human history. Across the solar system, every human being felt the change as their neural patterns were gently enhanced, their minds linked to the vast network of Zephyrian knowledge while retaining their essential humanity. The Devourer fleet found themselves facing not a primitive species with borrowed technology, but a hybrid civilization that combined human creativity with alien wisdom. The battle's outcome was no longer in doubt. Jake Morrison, the engineer who had once sought death as penance for his failures, had become the architect of humanity's greatest victory. But more than that, he had become the bridge between what humanity was and what it could become. In the quantum realm where his consciousness now resided permanently, Jake watched his transformed species take their first steps toward a future that neither human nor Zephyrian could have imagined alone. The real adventure was just beginning.